Disruption for the nonprofit community is going to come through adoption. There are still a lot of organizations that haven't adopted yet, and that's going to be their disruption.
I think the tech is there. I think there's plenty of tech for us to get our arms around right now. We just have to be willing to accept the change that it's ushering in and be adaptable and flexible. Again, I think there is such competition, more than there ever has been, for the philanthropic dollar out there. And you really have to look at different pieces of tech as just one tool in your tool chest, and not look for that, one size fits all solution that's going to bring in millions of dollars in a week.
I really feel like nonprofits have accelerated around the technology adoption curve more in the past 10 months than they did in the past 10 years. You see, as I mentioned before, the use of Zoom very prolifically, the use of Slack. There's a variety of different tools, and frankly, the website is getting a lot more use. That is now an organization's 24-hour messaging tool that they can get out and show what they're doing, what they're accomplishing. And what's great is you're seeing companies that are pivoting or just adapting to what our next normal is going to be.
The world kind of ends in March, and it's like, wow, we have no choice but to do these digital town hall type concepts that we had talked about in December of 2018. And you get, all of a sudden, we have 300 people logging in for every one of them. And so it is interesting how conditions have forced the hand.
Well, I wouldn't have answered that we needed a global pandemic. I think that the pandemic has, if you're going to make lemonade out of lemons, it has done a lot to get them ramped up. And I think there's going to be a natural affinity towards, once people see the power of technology, whether it's through communications with Zoom or internal communications with Slack, or data analytics with the variety of AI tools that are out there now, people are going to get more comfortable with it and just use it more. And that's what's going to cause an increased adoption.
I think the biggest barrier to nonprofits using tech in a smart way to their advantage, which might really impact their ROI, is the cost of the investment today is not one that nonprofits can bear or can stomach, especially smaller organizations or ones who have a really lean structure in terms of how they're spending to raise a dollar. One of the most important things is having a tool that can very easily integrate or naturally integrate with the current tools that organizations use, and also one that doesn't create more work.
What I see kind of internally is there's always going to be resistance to change. That's just human nature. And I think it's especially true in higher ed when you're talking about 200-year-old institutions. And things, have really changed quickly in the last 10, 15 years. 10 years, 9 years ago, I got hired at Cornell to become a social media community manager. And there were people internally who thought it was ridiculous to pay someone to do that. And now, if you were to say you as a university don't have a social media strategy, you would be like, well, who would enroll in a place like that, right?
And so I think that as technology continues to evolve, I think as an industry, fundraising does tend to be about 10 years behind. So, I think in my own organization and in other teams that I've worked at and other colleagues, we often are a little bit behind in implementing technologies. That's why I think, Sean, your company is so important, because a lot of fundraising teams do need a little bit of help getting into the current century in terms of how we're using technology to aid our work. But I would say that those different tools can be really helpful as we strategize and plan.
It's adoption of the right technologies. Some organizations don't need, AI. We deal with clients all the time who are really focused on just grants from foundations and from corporates, and don't really need AI to find individual donors. So it's really finding what's right for your organization and what's going to help your organization.
We get so many emails about new products and, how this can help us in our advancement shop. And sometimes things sound really good, but did we really take the time to think about, does it really solve a problem that we have? Is it the right tool for what we're trying to accomplish, or did it just sound really good and well, those other schools that we compete with have it, so we better get it, you know.
When we're interacting with clients, it's because they're either dissatisfied with the tools they have, they're enlarging the organization, and they know they need to build up individual giving capacity, and that's what they're focused on. Or they've just made a transition to a new CRM, and they've now got a really good hold of their data, but they want to figure out how not to spend months digging through it before they can action it. They want to action it more quickly. So what we always tell organizations is, we're here when the time's right. I'd never want to force any type of technology, be it AI or Zoom or anything else on an organization that it's just not right for.
Understanding the need that you're trying to address with whatever tool you're looking for. And as I think about, what is most helpful for nonprofit organizations seeking new technology tools, it's looking at what are small incremental changes that can make the biggest impact. What little levers can I turn that's going to make a big return on the other end? Because if I look at all of the problems that I'm trying to solve, it might seem overwhelming or insurmountable, but think about small little things that can be shifted or changed that will have a big impact. And then I think, Keith, too, if you're trying to, prove that X, Y, or Z technology tool is going to make an impact, then starting small and then scaling from there is going to really help if you're trying to make a case for a new technology implementation.
Understand what's happening with your data, whether it's a CRM that you're using, whether it's a predictive analytics platform or a wealth screening tool that you're using. Understand how your data is getting used on the back end, because there are a lot of companies out there that are taking that data and taking ownership of it. You may still have access to it and use it, but they're off using it for other purposes, and that's how they make their money. When we started off with the organization, we made a very strict rule that our clients' data is their data. It doesn't get shared with any other client or with any other organizations. And that's something a lot of people kind of gloss over. And you see events happening in the news where that's coming to bear. And it's going to cause issues if donors feel like their data is not secure with particular organizations that they're working with.